Today we're going to learn about the end of World War I. We have 3 daily objectives. Number 1, explain the causes and consequences of the Russian Revolution. Number 2, explain why the USA entered World War I. And number 3, list and describe the legacies of World War I. So we talked about this map yesterday, or in the last video. Talks about how all of the different places around the world contributed to World War I and made it the first true world war. First big event is the Russian Revolution. So Russia was the backwards country of Europe, technologically not nearly as advanced as the rest of Europe, did not industrialize nearly as quickly. Russia did not formally end serfdom until 300 years after the rest of Europe, so you're talking about 1800s. Until 1917, Russia was ruled by a czar or a king. This is him over here. And then Russia was an absolute monarchy. The czar, the king, had all the power. Industrialized much slower than other countries. But industrialization did fuel the growth of a working class and their discontent. So this guy over here, Vladimir Lenin, he is a follower of Karl Marx. He's read the Communist Manifesto. He is a Russian. He creates the Communist Party in Russia that opposes the Tsar. Over 4 million Russians die in World War I. And on top of that, the Russian economy has basically collapsed. Vladimir Lenin was actually living in Germany at the time, and the Germans send him in a streetcar filled with gold to go and start the Communist Party in Russia, kind of as like an operation to end the Tsar's rule and knock Russia out of the war. Because of the catastrophe, and obviously with this German support, Vladimir Lenin and the Communist Party assumes control of the country. The Civil War wages in the country between the old nobility and the new People's Army. Now, Russia gives lots and lots of land to Germany as a result of surrendering. And this proves to be, at least for a moment, looks like a huge victory for the Germans, because now they can take all of their soldiers and send them to the Western Front against the remaining Allies. But things change for the Allies when the U.S. gets involved. So there's 2 key reasons the United States gets involved in World War I. The first is the sinking of the Lusitania. So Germany is using its submarines to destroy ships carrying supplies to its enemies, mostly the French and the British, in Europe. Now, the United States is selling lots and lots of guns and ammunition to the Allies, because, you know, this is America, we like money. And the Germans are using their subs to sink those ships. This changes with the Lusitania. The Lusitania was actually a British passenger ship that was carrying a bunch of British and American citizens. The Germans think there are weapons on the Lusitania. That's never actually been proven if there were. But they think there are weapons on the Lusitania. They see this as a convoy ship bringing weapons to their enemy. So a German sub sinks the Lusitania. 5 more American ships are sunk by Germany. This makes Americans very angry. They've just seen their citizens, the U.S. is not in the war, killed by the Germans. Americans are not happy. So that's the first thing. Second thing is the Zimmerman telegram. So Germany sends a letter to Mexico and says, "Yo, Mexico, make you a deal. You join our team, we'll help you beat up the Americans, and we'll give you back all the land that the United States took in the Mexican-American War." Mexicans aren't having anything to do with that. They're like, nah, we're good, not interested. But the telegram, the letter leaks to the United States. U.S. finds out about it, makes them very angry. So between the telegram and Lusitania, the USA declares war. At this point, the war changes a lot. We get 2 technologies which had already kind of sort of been around in the war, but now they're in full force. First is tanks. Tanks are actually invented by the British. They basically take not lawn tractors, but like actual tractors, like farm tractors. They put guns on them, they give them some armor, and they tell them to go. The great thing about a tank is it can go over the trenches, and because it's heavily armored, machine guns can't stop them. So the tank, and this next innovation right here, the airplane, are ultimately what ends trench warfare. Now this is a German airplane, but the Allies have just as sophisticated airplanes. So between airplanes and tanks, next thing you know, World War I starts moving. We're not stuck in stalemate in trenches anymore. Other big thing, men The men have all gone to war. Women are working the fields. Women really step up to fill traditional male jobs during World War I. They're working in the factories, they're working on the farms, trying to produce to keep the economies in the country and the war effort going. So women really step up and make a huge difference. Now, with these technologies, with the contributions of women, and with the contributions of the United States, ultimately the war does end with the Allies winning. The Allies do not conquer all of Germany. Instead, what happens is the German Kaiser, the king, he actually steps down and is replaced with a republic, and the new prime minister surrenders. So Germany and Austria-Hungary are defeated by the Allies. This is a picture in London. People are celebrating the victory. World War I has some pretty serious legacies. The first is new technologies, whether that's tanks and airplanes, chemical weapons. All of those kinds of things are used for the first time in World War I. This is really the first big war where the Industrial Revolution has had a huge impact, at least between Europeans, not necessarily between Europeans and other people. 8.5 million soldiers die and 21 million are injured. That does not count civilians, so people not directly involved in the war. It costs about $338 billion, which is several trillion in today's money, adjusted for inflation. It also ends with the League of Nations. League of Nations is basically all the countries that win come together and say, we're going to form a League of Nations. This is a place where all the countries in the world are going to come and meet, and when they have problems, they're going to solve them. They're going to talk them out. They're going to figure out solutions instead of going to war. League of Nations ultimately is a huge failure, but we'll talk about that a little later. And it also ends with the Treaty of Versailles. This is a huge legacy of World War I. A lot of consequences for Germany. They lose lots of land. It puts limits on the size of the German military. They're allowed no more than 100,000 soldiers, no Air Force, and no Navy. That sounds like a lot, but that includes police. It blames Germany solely for the war. It says, Germany, World War I was all your fault. Got nothing to do with anybody else. It's all you. And it also carves out nation states, so countries that reflect groups of people out of the multi-ethnic empires of Europe, especially Austria-Hungary, which was kind of a weird amalgam of lots of different groups of people. It's a great political cartoon over here. We see the Allied powers forcing the peace terms, the pill, down the throat of the Central Powers. You've got to swallow it whether you like it or not. You got no choice. And we see the fist of the Central Powers kind of, again, forcing Germany down these peace terms. Germans are not going to like these peace terms. This is going to ultimately be a huge reason that World War II starts. Last slide. So this is a photo of a city in Europe. This is Verdun. It's been completely destroyed. Realize that Europe is completely destroyed as a result of World War I. It's a huge problem, but this is going to help fuel growth in the United States. Take a couple minutes, answer your 3 daily objectives.